under the direction of the real expert on the Battle of Chickamauga after Ed, Dr. William Glenn Robertson, who retired from his Army service last August.
He's really retired finally.
Yes, Glenn retired in
When's his book going to come out?
Well, he is working on his Chickamauga book. We email 2-3 times a week about.
He's actually going to finish.
He is actually at work on it. Over the years, he has because he taught Chickamauga as a military history study example at the Command and General Staff College for 25 years. He had a lot of students over the years who provided him information, and now that he's going back and actually writing the manuscript, what he is finding sometimes is that the student might not have provided him all the proper citation, and so 1 to 3 times a week I get an email from Glenn, hey, by chance, has somebody given you this? And if so, does it have a more proper citation? So he is at work on it, we'll hopefully see it in the not too distant future. But these maps or graphics were produced as part of their study, where they basically use this campaign as an example of how to use military history to teach modern military art and science. And the Army has been doing that again since the 1980s. But this depicts the landscape as it was at the time of the battle. We are on the map right about here, essentially between these two X's. That X is the shell pyramid you march past. This X is the monument at the end of this path. As Ed related, when this group visited in '96 the last time, you did not have this view. Trees were growing on this wet weather drainage here, and it was very difficult to understand what happened here. We've been able to take down 12 acres of trees here, but there's still some work to do in this area, which was truncated by the regional office. The field on the other side extends further to the east. Today it ends where trees have grown up on this wet weather drainage. It needs to extend further, and then this field down here to our southeast is entirely grown up and needs to be cut open. Now this road that runs off to the east, some of you can see the back of the stop sign by that white pickup truck that is parked there. That road in 2 miles leads to Alexander's Bridge. And who was engaged at Alexander's Bridge on September the 18th? John Thomas Wilder's Brigade of Mounted Infantry. And Wilder that evening had withdrawn in front of the advancing Confederates after being forced to abandon his position at Alexander's Bridge, and he stopped that night in the woods, just on the other side of the Lafayette Road, just on the other side of that field. And that evening, 25,000 Confederates come up in his front there. Wilder the next morning receives an order from Rosecrans. Take up a position in this area to protect the right fighting flank of the Union Army. But this is before dawn, before the fight has begun up at Jay's Mill. At that time, where is the right flank of the Union Army? It is still many miles to the south. But this order to Wilder tells us what Rosecrans was expecting to happen during the course of the day. During the course of the day, the Union Army would shift to the north of this area, and Rosecrans wanted Wilder with his brigade of 2,000 men armed with almost all of them with the Spencer repeating rifle on his right flank. Wilder, knowing all those Confederates are in the woods on the other side, fearing that the Confederates might use the cover of the forest to surge forward and overwhelm him. Of course, he's giving them credit for coordination, cooperation, synchronization, something that should be clear to the Federals the Confederates lack. But Wilder decides that there could be a better place. Doing a quick reconnaissance, he finds that the better ground would be here, the wood line behind you. And he will pull his troops back out of the woods on the other side of the Lafayette Road, across the Lafayette Road, and deploy them along the edge of the woods there, just to the west of where we are right now. Now, I set this up this way, or a similar way, with my military groups, and make them do the quick terrain analysis. Where would you put Wilder? And most of them get it right and put it back there. But Glenn gives us a little cheat sheet. I don't show them this until afterwards. But here are all the Confederates in the front, and Wilder pulls back from his position here, back to the edge of the woods. And Wilder does this before dawn, a little after 7 a.m. What begins up there to the northeast of us, more than 3 miles away. That fight up there by Jay's Mill. And during the course of the morning and early afternoon, what happens? The sound of battle rolls closer towards him. About 2 o'clock, another Union division, a small division, commanded by the unarrested, unindicted, untried, unconvicted, unpunished murderer of another Union general, Jefferson Columbus Davis's division, comes on the field. And Davis's division marches up from the west and moves through that large field there. Wilder sees Davis, rides over to him and says, "General Davis, what are you doing?" Davis says, "I've been ordered to go into the woods on the other side of the road and support Van Cleve's division." Wilder says, "General Davis, that's not a real good idea. There are lots of guys in gray suits in the woods on the other side of the Lafayette Road." But General Davis says to Colonel Wilder, "My orders are." And Davis marches his 2 small brigades of 2,200 men into the woods on the other side of the Lafayette Road. And as the arrows on this map suggest, what happens to Davis's division? They're driven out of the woods. When? Not in coordination with Stuart, but on Hood's own orders, Johnson's division attacks, but attacks too far to the south to be of aid to Stuart. Johnson is attacking on his own, and he is attacking from southeast to northwest. He crosses the Lafayette Road just to the north of where we are, and as Wilder watches this unfold, Wilder looks across the field there to his north and sees the left flank of McNair's brigade moving across the field. Wilder quickly turns some of his troops and fires into the flank of McNair's brigade and sends McNair back into the woods to the north. Some of the same Federals who stopped Stuart will then drive Johnson back. During this time, Jefferson Davis has reorganized his division along the Lafayette Road, and Davis is joined by elements of Thomas J. Wood's division. Wood has 2 brigades, George Buell's brigade, which is going to be used in the Vineyard Field right over here, and Parker's brigade. Parker's brigade marches up from the south from Lee and Gordon's Mill, marches up the corridor of the Lafayette Road, and then the brigade is going to split. Part of the brigade is going to turn and go into the woods on the east side of the Lafayette Road, and that includes the 64th Ohio, along with the 125th. The other 2 regiments, the 65th Ohio and the 3rd Kentucky, continue on up the corridor of the Lafayette Road, helping with the completion of the withdrawal of Bushrod Johnson's division. But now the next Confederate division is attacking. It is the 3 Brigade Division, normally under John Bell Hood. But since Hood is this day acting as a corps commander, Evander Law is commanding the 3 brigades. Robertson is on the left front. Law's Alabama Brigade is on the right front, and Benning's Georgia Brigade is in reserve. As that division goes forward, the Alabamans begin to do their mid-war thing of wandering aimlessly on battlefields. As the division moves forward and veers off to the southwest, the Alabama Brigade veers off to the northwest and goes off and fights on its own little hook up away from here. This causes Law to have to bring Benning's Georgia Brigade up onto the front line, and now attacking from, and Larry, I'm going to let you hold that, and now attacking from the northeast, moving southwestward, are the 2 brigades, remaining brigades of Law, Robertson's Texans and Arkansans on the left, and Benning's Georgians on the right. As they come forward, They strike Davis's and Wood's men in the woods on the other side of the Lafayette Road. They begin to drive them back, drive them southwestward out of the woods. And as they do, these Union troops withdraw out of the woods and cross the road and begin going off in that direction. All of a sudden, Confederates begin to appear out of the woods over here. At the time, these trees were even thinner than they are today. Georgians appear there, Texans over here, and they begin to cross the road. What do those Confederates not know? Who is back there? Wilder is back there. Can Wilder immediately open fire? No. What's withdrawing across his front? Federal troops. But can Wilder wait indefinitely to open fire? No. And Wilder eventually gave to the command. And about 1,200 men with Spencer repeating rifles opened fire. And imagine being one of the Arkansans, Texans, and Georgians, when all of a sudden, as you're moving this way, what erupts from that wood edge right over there? This huge volume of fire. And if you were one of those Arkansans, Texans, or Georgians, what are you going to do? Some are going to die. Most are going to look for cover. And what do they find as cover? That wet weather drainage. And they go tumbling into it. That wet weather drainage is dead space to John Thomas Wilder. He can't fire directly down into it from his position there. But by having studied the terrain ahead of time, he realizes he has an opportunity. The Georgians are advancing this way. There's an arm of the wet weather drainage that runs back towards Wilder's position. It is parallel with the front of the right of Benning's brigade. And Georgians have tumbled down into the wet weather drainage right over here. Wilder says, I have an enfilade fire on the arm of the wet weather drainage. And Wilder turns to Eli Lilly and says to Lilly, move one section of your guns a little further to the north to be able to fire down the arm of that wet weather drainage. And Lilly turns to Lieutenant Scott and says, Lieutenant Scott, move your section to the north. And Scott shifts his 2 3-inch ordnance rifles just a little bit further to the north where they can fire right down the arm of that drainage. And they open fire with double-shotted canister out of those 3-inch rifles and send round after round down the arm of that drainage. They shred the right flank of Benning's Georgia Brigade. They have a partial enfilade fire across the rest of the wet weather drainage. And where do you think the high watermark Hood's attack is? That wet weather drainage. In 1s and 2s, the Confederates then go back into the woods on the other side. This allows Davis and Wood to reorganize their troops. It allows Phil Sheridan to bring up part of his division, in particular Bradley's brigade. And as darkness ends the fighting here, the situation stabilizes with the Confederates in the woods on the other side of the Lafayette Road, Federals along the Lafayette Road, and where is Wilder? He's still back at the edge of the woods. This is perhaps the bloodiest ground on the Chickamauga battlefield. Within a half a mile of that stop sign at the intersection there, about 16,000 American soldiers were engaged over 4 hours' time. And while it is difficult, as many as 2,500 of them have become casualties. There are hundreds of seriously wounded soldiers on both sides, essentially lying in a no-man's land zone because of the close proximity of the two sides, laying here that night, crying for assistance as darkness settled over the battle.
The only thing I could add is that Davis, and you may have noticed, both Davis and Wood are each short a brigade. Post brigade of Davis's is back toward McLemore's Cove, guarding wagons, and Wagner's brigade of Wood's division is in Chattanooga.
All right. Speaking of wagons, we've got a ration issue to make. So expeditiously make your way back to the bus, and we'll move on.
Breckenridge and General Claiborne are going to step off first. Remember, Daniel Harvey Hill has been emasculated. He has been made irrelevant. He has no command at all. He has been, Bragg has shown his power, and he's very disappointed with D.H. Hill on the 19th. So, and Longstreet will not get here until shortly before midnight on the 20th. You're going to find out when Jim gets started. The attack is to be at day dawn, and it's going to be the same as Bragg's plan on the morning of the 19th. 24 hours late, is still going to be attacking from north to south to drive the Union forces back into McLemore's Cove. So there's going to be a 3-hour delay in the attack, and of course, the Union troops, and their leadership, if they have insomnia, they're in pretty good shape. As they've been listening to the wee hours of the morning on the 20th, of Rosecrans's plan is to keep his left straw, to make sure that the communications are kept with Chattanooga. To the north of us, about 2 miles, will be Gordon Granger's command, out of which Dan McCook's command had come. How does all this happen? Why is there a 3-hour delay in attack? Why is Thomas been told, and the Union are going to hold their left, even if they have to withdraw every man on their right. It's got to be held. Thomas's men are fortified behind barricades built of the timber they had felled that night. So if you're a good Confederate soldier, you know you're going to have a tough job, because the Union have had all night to throw up a line of breastworks along what is now called Fortification Avenue.
All right. As Ed has indicated, Bragg has ordered an attack for day dawn. Frustrated with Daniel Harvey Hill and Leonidas Polk and Thomas Carmichael Hindman and Simon Bolivar Buckner and, well, got several other people, Braxton Bragg on the evening of the 19th in the early morning hours of the 20th has reorganized his army. He has completed a reorganization which he had essentially started on the 19th by naming Polk to command the right portion of the line. He has divided the army into 2 wings. A right wing under the disobedient Bishop General Leonidas Polk, and the left wing under James Longstreet. But as Ed has indicated, James Longstreet did not arrive at Bragg's headquarters until late on September the 19th. In fact, it is after 11 p.m. before James Longstreet found Braxton Bragg's headquarters. Bragg had, prior to that, divided the army and designated James Longstreet as the left-wing commander. What Bragg hoped was that by this reorganization, by this division of the army into 2 wings, by subordinating Daniel Harvey Hill and Simon Bolivar Buckner and John Bell Hood and others to these 2-wing commanders, some coordination, cooperation, unity of command, teamwork, synchronization could be achieved. And Bragg issued relatively simple orders for a resumption of the offensive operations on September the 20th. As Ed indicated, the attack is supposed to go at day dawn, the first bit of daylight. And Braxton Bragg has ordered the attack in echelon by division from north to south. What Braxton Bragg had ordered was that all the divisions of the Army were to get online with one another side by side from north to south. And I'll draft a few people here to help illustrate that. Paul, if I can get you to step forward just a little bit. I'm going to put you right here, and I'm going to make you John Cable Breckenridge, the former Vice President of the United States, okay?
Youngest man to ever hold that office.
Yep. Rob, going to make you another Confederate division. Theoretically, you would be Patrick Clayburgh's division. So you're right there. And Fred, going to get you to step up here as the next division. And Tom, okay? Tom, get you to step in here. Sir, if you'll step up there. Cindy, if you'll come and join here. If you'll come and join there. So step right in there. Braxton Bragg has 11 infantry divisions in his army. What he ordered was that all 11 infantry divisions were to get online to side by side to one another from north to south. And at day dawn, the first bit of daylight, just as soon as a little bit of light appears and you can start to see, the northernmost division, Breckenridge's division, would jump off. As soon as they move, that next division to the south, seeing that, it would jump off. And then the next division, seeing it, would jump off. And so on down the line. And what Braxton Bragg hoped was that they would be striking the Union line in their front. And this is where I need to be my friend Keith Bohannon, who has no shoulder blades or something like that, and is able to simply fold his arms back straight behind him. But what Bragg was hoping was that as each one of these Confederate divisions struck the Union line in its front, which, by the way, he doesn't know exactly where it is, and he didn't make much effort overnight to find out, that first division striking the Union left flank would get that Union division going back just a little bit, and then the next division, then the next division, then the next division. And if things worked just the way that Braxton Bragg planned, it would be, as Ed said, what he hoped to do would be to essentially be swinging the Union Army off to the southwest and driving it down into McLemore's Cove to crush it against the wall of Lookout Mountain. Where would the Confederate Army wind up between, or where relative to the Union Army in Chattanooga? In between. Sound like a pretty good plan? Yeah, except, okay. I guess you're just some of the logistical people who've come forward there. So, there's one problem with that. Nobody's nobody behind. And what if that northernmost Union infantry division or Union force did not give ground? Would the next one give ground? Probably not. Would the next one give ground? Probably not. There's no depth, no mass to this formation. An alternate formation might have been to have had more weight on the right flank. Now, the Army has been divided into those two wings. The 5 northernmost divisions are in Polk's right wing. James Longstreet has 6 divisions to his south. Even within Polk's wing, could Polk have, as a senior subordinate, made a modification to Bragg's army, or Bragg's order? Theoretically, yes. Should Polk have formed, perhaps, some other formation where maybe it is 2 up, 2 back, and 1 in reserve, so that what hits the Union line right on the left flank? Some real mass or some real strength. And also, overnight, In general, where should all of the Confederates have been shifted? Further to the north to strike the Union left flank. So should some effort have been made overnight to find out more clearly where the left flank was? Yes. Now, is that going to be easy in the dark in the woods with the enemy there? No. But there is not much evidence of Confederate reconnaissance that night. John Cable Breckinridge, who'd been engaged down on the far left at Glass's Mill on the 19th, that afternoon had marched north, and just after dark had crossed Chattanoga Creek down at Alexander's Bridge. Breckinridge had put his troops to bivouac in the large cornfield down there at the Alexander Farm, and Breckinridge had then sought to find out what the orders were for the next day. Breckinridge could not find his corps commander, Daniel Harvey Hill. Hill never made it to Bragg's headquarters that night. We know pretty clearly today that Daniel Harvey Hill rode around Braxton Bragg's headquarters in a circle that had a half-mile radius. Never found Bragg's headquarters. And if you think these communications problems are bad, as we've described them already, they even get almost silly. Daniel Harvey Hill had a bad back from his pre-war military experience. His back was hurting him. After riding around looking for Bragg's headquarters for a while, he decided to stop riding, lay down on the side of the road, and rest, while his staff went out to look for, by this time he had been told, to find Polk's headquarters. The staff officer that Polk sent out looking for Hill probably rode right past the recumbent Hill on the side of the road. Never found Hill, never told Polk that he hadn't found Hill. So Breckinridge never saw Hill that night either. Breckinridge did see Leonidas Polk. What division is supposed to open the attack at day dawn? Breckinridge's. Guess what Polk did not tell Breckinridge? All Polk told Breckinridge was, you're supposed to move up and take position on the right. Didn't say anything about attacking at day dawn. And guess where Breckinridge slept the night of the 19th and the early morning hours of the 20th? At Polk's headquarters, within a few feet of the sleeping bishop. And what did Polk not tell Breckinridge? The next morning, well before dawn, Breckinridge woke up, left Polk's headquarters, went over to his division and said, we're supposed to go up on the right flank, marched up into that area and formed up his division. He does not know he is supposed to attack at day dawn. So the Confederates are not ready to attack at day dawn that morning. And then there's an even greater problem. The two divisions who were supposed to open the attack first, Breckinridge and Claiborne, they have no orders to attack at dawn. Also, they have no rations. Their last food was consumed on the 19th or sometime on the 18th. Those men are 12, 24, or 36 hours without any food. Guess what just arrived in the troops right at dawn on the morning of the 20th? The food for yesterday. And guess what the order is? Eat. And the boiled beef and cornbread is passed out, and Breckinridge's and Claiborne's men begin to eat. Guess what arrived about 30 minutes later? The order to attack at day dawn, which is now almost an hour ago. And even that arrives in a very almost unbelievable and disgusting fashion. Leonidas Polk, Braxton Bragg rides out onto the field to try to find out what's going on. Encounters Polk. Polk can't offer any good explanation. Polk reiterates the order for the dawn attack. A staff officer goes out. Since they can't find Hill, the order is addressed directly to Breckinridge and Claiborne. By the time that courier found Breckinridge and Claiborne were sitting in the ruins of Lewis's battery, the abandoned equipment of that battery that was still on the field, with Daniel Harvey Hill. And the staff officer rode up and said, I have orders for Generals Breckinridge and Claiborne. And Daniel Harvey Hill says, I'll see those orders. What does the staff officer say? I have orders for Generals Breckinridge and Claiborne, and hands them to one or the other, who very quickly hands it to Daniel Harvey Hill. The order is for the attack at dawn, which is now more than an hour ago. What are Breckinridge's and Claiborne's men doing? Eating. Or can they attack immediately? No. As a result of this, those 3 hours that Ann mentioned are going to pass before Breckinridge's and Claiborne's men are ready to attack. And during those 3 hours, the Union troops only further strengthened their position, particularly on the left flank. Bragg that night did nothing to solve these communications problems within his army by dividing the army into the two wings. In many ways, he only exacerbated that problem because he's created new levels of command for information to have to pass through. And you also have the breakdown in the logistics of getting Breckinridge's and Claiborne's men fed. Any questions about the Confederate situation?
Now you go to the Union one next. As he said, the Confederate attack is going to be postponed at least 3 hours, maybe 3 hours and a half. Now remember the meeting up at the Widow Glenn's house. The Widow Glenn's house is that Thomas is to take position with his 4 divisions behind and hold this line of Russia, which they had thrown out. They suddenly find out that Dodge's brigade does not extend across the it does not extend beyond the breastworks. The breastworks end at the Lafayette Road. So that means that Rosecrans, who is up here, has noticed that. Rosecrans is going to take the position that he will withdraw everything on the Union right to enable Thomas to hold the Union left. And they find that fellow who has the problem I had night before last, General Nagley. Where is Jerry Augustine?
Right here.
Wave your hand. You have a super case of diarrhea.
Yes.
Where is Nagley? Nagley is down there near the Brotherton house in position down there. And Nagley is going to get orders to send his division up to this area here and take position on the left of General Dodd, Colonel Dodd, whose brigade anchored this left on the Kentucky line. So that means that Tim Stanley's and Sam Beatty's men are going to be out here hanging on the left flank when Breckinridge finally gets started. And Breckinridge can't get lost because he's going to guide his attack, as Jim will point out. He's going to guide on the Lafayette Road. That means Dan Adams, who is going to be to the right of the road, can't get lost. Nor can the Florida Brigade, whose monument is over there, on the left side of the road get lost. And these are, and it's going to end up, things are going to look good, as Jim is going to tell you, as the Union troops, as the Confederate troops, starting 3 hours late, are going to feel pain and suffering of the worst time to Tim Stanley's brigade and Beatty's brigade as they come south. And that's why you're going to see the 5th Company of the Washington Artillery up here. In fact, you're going so far, you're going to be into William Kelly Field. The Confederates can go into into the Kelly Field. They are probably going to win a big victory early in the day. But let's put Jim in and tell you how this all happened. Because Cleburne's division and Breckinridge's right flank division, which I just mentioned, ain't going to be very good. Instead of going against those doing against breastworks. And the enlisted men, the idea of breastworks comes from the bottom up. It doesn't come from the top down. The soldiers after Shiloh, those bloodbaths early, realized something that these most brilliant West Point officers don't realize. The technical revolution in weaponry has made that moving forward shoulder to shoulder a good way to go to the grave early. And these enlisted men realize that throwing up breastworks is a hell of a better life insurance policy than Marshall Rowley working for John Hancock insurance company can give you. If your insurance, life insurance, who does that? Does that do anything for your life at all?
Yeah.
None of it? What do those breastworks do for your life? So long.
When Breckinridge lined up with only limited guidance as to where to form, he lined up his division out to the east of us, about 1,000 yards, parallel to the Lafayette Road initially, and with the left end of the division opposite the Union left in the woods, which we'll see in just a moment. Cleburne's division, certainly we should step back there. There, Paul, I'll put you back in the and Rob, I'm going to get you to, stay right about there. Now you'll notice I've just put a space in here between Breckinridge and Cleburne. Cleburne is where he wound up after an attack right at dark on September the 19th. Breckinridge has come up overnight and moved into a position, but there is this space of almost half a mile between these two divisions, between Cleburne's right and Breckinridge's left. Breckinridge and Cleburne and Hill are aware of this, and so the order is that as these two divisions go forward, Cleburne's division is to echelon to the right front. Now, this is a really tricky maneuver, but they practiced it or drilled in it on a regular basis, so they were aware of what it was. And in this maneuver, and so Rob, you're one soldier, I'm the next. In this maneuver, the command is going to be half right face. So literally half right face. And now every soldier is a half right face like that. And now the command is going to be forward. We're going to do this real slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, on this count. Okay. But you can use both hands. Oh, okay. Forward. March. Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What we're doing is we're closing up that gap. Notice what happened to the gap. Okay, we can come back to here, the start position. Okay, that's what they envisioned.
Explain.
Well, yeah, that's right. So that's what's supposed to happen. Okay, as the two divisions go forward, Cleburne is supposed to echelon off to the right front, close up that gap. But there are two problems with that. One, the federal line is here in front, and both Breckinridge's left and Cleburne struck the federal line before that 800 yards was closed by only half. And so, when they finally strike the Federals, there is still 400 yards between the two flanks. And then there is the other problem. So, Tom, I'm going to get you to join the line and get you to come up here as well. Okay, the other problem is...
You don't have the band in here. Why is the band in here? You don't understand what the band is doing.
The other problem is that you've got Richard Holt, Sam Wood, and James Deschler. And actually, we need to complicate this business more. We need to come over here. Did you all step right in here? There, this is the right flank of Longstreet's wing. Longstreet is where we're going to find out. Is going to make some adjustments in his position too. He wants more room. Well, where's he going to get enough room? Okay, Mr. Deschler, how's it going to be coming forward? Very difficult.
Yeah, you get the pressure rated, so it's not going to bother.
Yeah, that's right. It's not going to matter in the end. So there's going to be a problem. Deschler's got to get through some of Longstreet's people when Longstreet moved his people up in front of some of Claiborne's men, Deschler's brigade in particular. And then there's the other problem. Sterling Alexander Martin Wood, you've had problems with Courage and Murfreesboro, Perryville, and Shiloh, and General Piper, General Hardy has spoken with you about this on each of those occasions. And you have been informed that if you do not manifest proper courage, you have to find something else. Well, on the evening of the 19th, guess what? Sterling Alexander Martin Wood once again manifested less than proper courage. And his brigade had some problems. Now, I say get ready to attack once again. Guess what order is not communicated to your regiments? The echelon
part.
order. Yes, that's right. And so, when Lucius Polk moved forward, you go by yourself. Sterling Alexander Martin Wood only yelled from behind the big tree, forward march. His troops go forward. You can't get through Longstreet's people. And so, while Breckinridge is attacking, as we'll find out in a minute, Claiborne is basically striking the Union line with one small brigade, Lucius Polk. And after Polk is fought out and goes to the rear, Sam Wood has struck the Union line, but further to the south and separated from Polk, and they are being repulsed. Claiborne has finally found Deschler trying to flounder and get through Longstreet's people, and so Deschler is told to come around and go into the space between Sam Wood and Polk. The Polk is now going to the rear, and as you go forward and strike the Federal line, actually we've got to turn you about like this. As you go forward and strike the Federal line, a Federal artillery piece discharges, and that projectile comes straight out and right into his chest. And as Roger Quarles Mills says, the first time I saw a beating heart was when I saw Deschler's on the ground beside his body. He's literally ripping his heart out of his body. So Deschler is going to be killed in the assault that will pass by the area where it happened. So, these two divisions, is Claiborne having any real effect on the Union line? No. But Breckinridge, believe it or not, comes close to achieving exactly what it was Bragg desired. When Breckinridge attacked from the east to the west, the left end of his line strikes the Union left flank down in the area where we'll be in just a moment. But the rest of the division continues westward. And up there in front of the Moore House, the McDonald House, where the visitor center is located today, The Louisiana and Alabama Brigade of Dan Adams crosses the Lafayette Road. Stonewalls, Floridians, North Carolinians, and Georgians come out of the woods right over there. They drive John Beatty's small brigade off in that direction, and they, Breckinridge, recognizing that he is astride the vital of the road, then orders these two brigades to turn south, and as Ed said, Adams' brigade driving south, guiding with his left on the Lafayette Road, and Stonewall driving south with his right, anchored on the Lafayette Road. They drive south down the corridor of the Lafayette Road, past two guns of Bridges, Illinois battery, which have been disabled and captured down there. They drive south down the corridor of the Lafayette Road into the woods, and then into the north end of the Kelly Field. And as they arrive there, where are they? They are behind the Union left flank. We'll see that more clearly at our next stop in just a moment. Supporting that movement of Adams' brigade, there are the 6 guns of the 5th Company Washington Artillery. They have moved into this position, hoping to be able to fire and support of their advanced brigade. But they're not going to be able to initially because of the woods and Adams' men being in the woods. But they have been moving forward, trying to find targets of opportunity to fire at, and they have participated in driving the few Union troops who were here off in the initial advance of Breckinridge. But finally, after 2 days, Braxton Bragg is starting to be where? On the Union left flank, between the Union Army and Chattanooga. But it is only 2 brigades of Breckinridge's division.
Point out what has happened to Ben Hard's helm.
Well, we'll do that at our next stop. We'll dispatch Helm at our next stop. Questions?
With him, the division commander, he is going to be in Walker's command, and Colquitt will get the lead. Get the lead of brigade forward, and he is going to do no better than Helm, which means he's going to have a mortuary monument very close to Ben Hardin. You still got stragglers back there.
All right, we are now on the Union line, near the Union left flank. On September the 19th, these Union troops, part of Thomas's 14th Corps, and attachments to his 14th Corps, like Richard Johnson's division and John Palmer's division just to the south of us, these troops fought mostly out to the east of where we are right now. And during the day, they had fought on an increasingly attenuated line out to the east, which Thomas grew concerned about. Late on September the 19th, George Thomas, having noticed a low rise of ground that runs north and south, parallel to the Lafayette Road, and several hundred yards to the east of the Lafayette Road, ordered that late on the 19th, the Baird's, Johnson's, Palmer's troops were to pull back to this low rise of ground and take position along its crest. Thomas, so desirous of this and wanting to make sure that it was correctly understood, had ridden forward to communicate it directly to Baird and Johnson, and had said to Baird and Johnson, since it is quiet in your sector out there right now, ride with me so I can show it to you personally. And Thomas brought Baird and Johnson back to this low rise of ground. Now you're probably saying, where is this low rise of ground? If you look south towards the bus, you can see the ground slope off just a little bit on either side of the road along which the bus is parked and which we will travel on later. As you look out to the east right here, you can see that we're on a little crest right here. The ground drops off in our front. As we look to the north, as we will see in just a moment, you'll be able to see the crest of that ground as well, and it dropping off just a little bit on either side. So Thomas shows Baird and Johnson this position, and that night, as they disengage from Claiborne's night attack, they will pull back here to this line. This also is going to allow them to take up the standard Union formation of the time out of Casey's tactics. Within the division, 2 brigades up and 1 brigade back, and within each brigade, 2 regiments up and 2 regiments back. And so this Union line becomes a line of lines, multiple lines of troops, at least 2, and in some places 4, and in Johnson's division at one point, all 3 brigades were stacked one behind the other, and there were briefly, very briefly, actually 6 lines of troops in Johnson's division. But these multiple lines of troops, these 4, 3, and 2 lines of depth of troops, they're going to give Thomas and Baird and Johnson and Palmer and Reynolds flexibility, versatility, the ability to react to changing circumstances. As these Union troops pull back to this line, they begin to, as it said, from the bottom up, begin to build field fortifications, scouring the floor of the forest for limbs and logs and branches, rocks, sticks, stones, stumps, and other things that might be laying around that they can drag up to create some field fortifications. Where there are axes, and there are not a huge number of them, they will put them to use to cut down some trees, to create logs for the field fortifications. They do not have shovels, picks, and axes to really dig down into the ground. Out surrounding Big Kelly Field is what? 5-foot-high split rail zigzag worm fence. And the roughly 8,300 fence rails of Mr. Kelly's farm. How long do you think it took for them to show up here on the crest of this low rise? Probably a dozen or so on the shoulders of 2 soldiers, carried up here and dropped into the pile. Not long at all. What else is out there in that field? Think all the way back to this morning. What did Brannan's men do before moving out to be engaged out to the east of us? They dropped their knapsacks, piled their knapsacks. And yes, even some knapsacks are going to be used in field fortifications. Now, if you're going to do that, you always want to use someone else's knapsack. But they'll just pile up everything they can get to get some crude field fortification, some crude protection. Now, if the Union Army had all the troops available on the face of the earth, how far would they have extended their line to the north? All the way to Chicago. Well, at least Chattanooga, okay, if not Chicago. But at least to Chattanooga. But they do not have an unlimited number of troops, so at some point they have to end their line. And where did they choose to end their line? Right here, where we are now. Notice the line as described by the monuments, coming up from beyond the bus, coming this way. And right here, what happens to the line? It starts to bend or fold back. And look what they put right here at this bend or angle in the line. An artillery battery, the 4th Indiana Battery. Now, yes, Kirk, they did put the monuments, so they did choose where to do this relative to the monuments. And one of the benefits they had here in this battle was that all the monuments told them where they needed to fight. We have had people ask, if there was a battle here, how come there aren't any bullet holes in the monuments? When I've been asked that, I say, you just haven't looked carefully enough. Because unfortunately, there are at least 2 monuments that have bullet holes in them. One of them down at Vineyard Field, the 72nd Indiana Monument, right in the center of the front stone face. Probably from an overzealous law enforcement ranger shooting at a stray cat. The cats I shot at were not around that monument.
Where do you keep them in the winter?
I'm sorry?
Where do you keep them in the winter?
Right here at this bend or angle in the line, they put the surviving guns of the 4th Indiana Battery. One section can fire straight out to the east, but the section on the left can fire to the northeast and north. Now, as you look to the north, look what's happening to the line. The line is actually starting to bend or curve or fold back. Now let's walk up just a little bit further. Now, look what happens right here. Look, the crest of the low rise runs off in that direction. Now, where are these monuments here? They're on the backside of the crest of that low rise of ground. This is where the Union line begins to be bent or folded back, refused. Since they can't continue the line indefinitely to the north, since they have to fold it back, they're going to have to select the position from which to do that. And they chose to do it right here because at the time of the Civil War, beginning right here and stretching northward for a mile, was a unique ecological community known as a cedar glade. If you look right over here, notice these few cedars. Notice the little grassy area right there underneath those cedars. Does that look different than what's under the trees to either side of it?
Right.
Yes. And as we walk up here a little bit further, you'll see another little area like that over here, and there are more of them up here along the crest of the rise. What this is a place where the underlying limestone is very close to the surface, and that underlying limestone, as it weathered, lowered the pH of the soil, made the soil much more basic, and as a result, different plants grow in these cedar glades. The cedar glades look like an old field to most of the soldiers. They were, this one was 150 or so yards wide. So imagine 75 yards of kind of old field on either side of the crest of this low rise of ground. It had kind of waist-high brown grass in it, has some unique plant communities that grow in them. The cedar glade today has been choked off because of the Chinese privet in particular. It has been choked down to just these little knots, like this one right here, the one right over here, and the other string of them on up along the crest of the low rise. But at the time, the cedar glade was a mile long north to south and about 150 yards wide. What does that mile long, 150 yard wide open space provide these Union troops right here where the line begins to fold or bend back? Fields of observation and fields of fire. If the enemy is going to attack the Union left flank, what are they going to have to cross? That cedar glade. And look what they put right where at the southern end of the cedar glade. Cannon. The guns of the 4th Indiana Battery can fire right up the eastern face of that low rise of ground. The Union line is going to integrate itself into the terrain here to make as strong a position as possible. And the reason these monuments curve the way they do right here is these Union troops take position right at the edge of the woods where they are looking out into that open ground. Let's walk up just a little bit further. Right at the edge of the woods and the open ground. It even slopes up in front just as it did for them. They're in a reverse slope defense. That's often a disadvantage, but it can also be an advantage, particularly in this case because they had the woods to provide them cover. The Confederates have attacked out of the woods on the other side, up the slope, and are now silhouetted on the crest there in front when the men of the 33rd Ohio take them under fire. And while these Confederates are getting fire directly in front, they're also getting fire from where? From their left flank, from the guns of the 4th Indiana Battery, which only makes this reverse slope defense for these Federals even more viable because they have that flanking or enfilade fire into the Confederate line. So they depict that, and notice what you see amongst these soldiers at the edge of the woods. logs, limbs, branches, rocks.
To show you the importance of this, when you go to Gettysburg, on the lesser Preston Field,
14th.
let's go to Green's Brigade and Gettysburg. They're always going to incorporate. Remember, those Gettysburg monuments are up about 10 years before this. They incorporate why they live and why they don't die and why they prevail.
Why the acorn?
Well, in 1863, beginning in the Army of the Potomac, they began to adopt symbols for their different corps level organizations. And when troops of the 11th and 12th Corps of the Army of the Potomac are sent out from Virginia in late September of 1863 to reinforce the Army of the Cumberland after the Battle of Chickamauga, men of the 11th and 12th Corps come out wearing their crescent moons and stars. And the men of the Army of the Cumberland see that. In fact, Army of the Cumberland soldiers first had contact really with men of the 2nd Division of the 20th Corps, 2nd Division of the 12th Corps, whose corps badge was a white star. And since they were at this time wearing them on their forage caps primarily, many of the Army of the Cumberland soldiers, not quite being familiar with all the intricacies of Army design, see a bunch of guys wearing a single star, the symbol of a Brigadier General. And one of the cracks made by the Army of the Cumberland and to the troops of the 2nd Corps of the 2nd Division of the 12th Corps is there are an awful lot of generals amongst humans, but it's a corps badge. And after Chattanooga, in the spring of 1864, when the Army of the Cumberland reorganizes, they decide to adopt corps badges as well. And the Union 14th Corps adopted the acorn to represent that they had stood as sturdy as an oak at Chickamauga. That while men of the 21st and 20th Corps are driven and swept from the field, as we'll hear in a little bit, the men of the 14th Corps, mostly along this line we are on now and on Snodgrass Hill, held their position until ordered away. And so in the Atlanta campaign, as Sherman took his combined Army group south from Chattanooga towards Atlanta, you would have seen the men of the 14th Corps proudly wearing their red, white, or blue, or green, or orange acorns somewhere on their person, on their coat, or on their hat, to indicate that they were a part of the 14th Corps and had stood as sturdy as an oak at Chickamauga. 30 years later, when the veterans of the 14th Corps come back to erect the monuments here on this battlefield, what do they want to make sure they include on their monuments? The acorn. And we've just looked at the monument to the 33rd and 2nd Ohio. 150 years ago, this past month, men of these two regiments, along with one other Ohio regiment, earned fame and recognition as the regiment, or as men from the 3 regiments that provided the soldiers for the Andrews Raid, or the Great Locomotive Chase. And it is some of the surviving men of that raid who make it back to Union lines, who will be the first who are physically presented the just recently created High Honor for Gallantry that is to be awarded by our country to its soldiers, the Medal of Honor. Created in the spring of 1862, the first medals were presented on March 25th, 1863, in a ceremony in the White House. And those first medals were presented to members of the Andrews Raid Party. A couple of those men were back here in their regiment, the 2nd, 33rd, or 21st Ohio, fighting here at Chickamauga. This is one of the earliest battles where someone who had been awarded that medal would have, again, been in combat for our country. So probably right here along this line one of those fellows was engaged.
And, if you,
in
and
18.
at Gettysburg you go, Gettysburg, the Army of the Potomac adopted the Corps badge in the late winter of 1863. And they use it for two things, for identification and unit pride. So when the Gettysburg gets most of their monuments in the 1880s. And you go to the Gettysburg Park, before this park is established, they almost always will incorporate the Corps badge. Thus, the circle for the first Corps, the trifoil for the second Corps, the diamond for the third Corps, the Maltese cross for the fifth Corps, the Greek cross for the sixth Corps, the crescent for the 11th Corps, being a lot of trouble, and the star. And in the Army of the Potomac, since they normally have three divisions, the people that would be in the first division wear the red badge. The people in the second division wear the white badge. And the people in the third division wear the blue badge. So you can tell which is which. So it becomes universal. And it's universal with the armed services now, and all men are proud of their unit badge. It starts back with General Hooker and Dan Butterfield. But actually, if you want to trace it even further, Kearny, before he dies, adopts the red diamond for only his division. The red diamond division is the first corps of the third division. So really, you go back to Bill Kearny.
Just beyond here, you see a few limbs and logs and branches, rock, sticks, stones, stumps, fence rails that were put up by some of our volunteers a couple of years ago doing a program about this.